Welcome to episode 83 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Bob, there was already plenty to talk about in this show, with everything going on at Indianapolis, with Kyle Larson running the double with qualifying today, and of course the new tire compounds at North Wilkesboro. But boy, oh boy, do we get something extra.
Well, we are keeping it in the family for the All-Star Weekend at North Wilkesboro. We had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Sr. going after a former Cup Series champion in the garage. They better not lay a hand on Bob Pockers.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
Well, Bob, the more things that change, the more they stay the same. Joey Logano remains the champion of all things meaningless in NASCAR. I mean, whether it's the Clash, the All-Star race, just seems to win these types of races.
Yeah, he loves these new tracks, whether, like you said, the Clash, Gateway, the Bristol Dirt, a new track in the next-gen car. Joey Logano is probably going to win that, so I'm going to be betting my 401k on him at Iowa in a couple weeks. But welcome to Breaking Balls. It's episode 3, of course. If you're new here, like and subscribe. As the month of May is ramping up here, boy, we have a loaded show to talk about. It didn't feel like we were going to have a lot at first here, and then boy, the broadcast and the post-race show for Fox happened. And let me tell you, for once, it was notable.
It was very notable, Bob. I mean, we may as well get the semantics out of the way. Out of the 200 laps, 199 of them were led by Joey Logano, an absolute dominant performance. But, I mean, speaking of dominant, we may as well get right into it, don't you think?
Yeah. We said it in the intro there where you had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. getting into it with Kyle Busch, of all people, on the pit road garage there in North Wilkesboro. Now, there was an incident on lap 2 there. Ricky threw it in 3 wide. Kyle Busch ends up getting into the wall and takes out Ricky Stenhouse because he feels he's been, disserviced there. Stenhouse parks it in Kyle Busch's pit stall, goes at Kyle Busch's crew chief, says, "I'm going to be waiting for him when he gets done." And boy, for once, one of these NASCAR drivers was not all talk. He said, "I am going to back my words up." And the right hook from Mississippi all the way to Carolina woo, man, man.
Yeah, literally just a one piece, no biscuit really. I mean, he didn't follow it up with anything, but I mean, I'll say this. I'm with Dale Jr., who tweeted after the race, we need to cement in all of the tunnels that allow these drivers to leave the racetrack, because at this point, I want nothing but, put a hell in a cell around the track every time NASCAR comes to town. Because at this point, if this is the type of stuff we're going to get...
Lock the doors behind him! Lock the doors behind him!
Amen. I mean, look... This was one of the most interesting, this was one of the most interesting things we've had happen in this sport post-race in a very long time. And the way that Ricky Stenhouse, I thought it was very kind of corny at first when he was like, "Oh, I'm going to have Richard Childress hold my watch." Because, the whole history there. But boy, oh boy, did he back it up. And not only that, he brought his family with him, Bob.
Well, you see this guy come in after they've been split up, hold on to Kyle Busch. I think he was trying to just keep Kyle Busch off of him, but when they saw somebody from Ricky Stenhouse's camp on Kyle Busch, they went at him, and it turned out to be Ricky Stenhouse Sr., Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s dad. So it really was all in the family at North Wilkesboro. True throwback feel in the garage there, and you even had Kyle Busch chirping back at him. Ricky was like, "I'm going to wreck you." Charlie goes, "Congrats, good. We suck too." Like, it was just a very weird scene all around.
Yeah, it's always good to see, I don't know his name, but the black gentleman who was in charge of breaking up all fights in NASCAR, good to see him, but also kind of weird because when he tackled Ricky Stenhouse, he was like, "Hey, go get my dad." And I was like, wait, that's a very weird thing to say after you just punched somebody in the face.
When you see that guy that you just mentioned in the background, I remember the Noah Gragson-Ross Chastain incident in Kansas last year, and before Noah Gragson could even respond with a punch of his own, that man was in the middle of it. So when you see him on the TV in a post-race incident, get ready, because there's a potential for fireworks to happen. And you had Joey Logano doing his winning interview on the front stretch there, and all these fireworks were going off. You could barely hear them. Little did we know the fireworks that were going to be going on in the infield.
Yeah, it's, dude, like you said, the right hand from absolute hell. I mean, it looked like they were actually going to walk away kind of peacefully, and then Ricky just decided, you know what? I've sat here this long. I may as well get my money's worth. Here's a right cross. See what happens. I mean, and then the way I thought it was interesting that, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starts the fight, and then Ricky Stenhouse Sr. had to eat 3 or 4 from Kyle Busch because of it. And then obviously, I mean, the pit crews did a heck of a job. God, shout out to Kyle Busch's team for defending the truck, man. I mean, you get the fuck off of this truck right now. You get the fuck out of here. Dude, hey, get off my lawn vibes. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Again, for 2024 NASCAR, we are having week after week where we have some kind of moment where we just circle and go, man, we're really doing okay right now. And again, you're coming into North Wilkesboro in the All-Star race. There's a lot of different storylines on the table, like we said in this intro, whether it's Kyle Larson, all these new tires, just the fact that we're at North Wilkesboro. We can't take that for granted because a few years ago, this track had weeds growing up through it. And now you've got Ricky Stenhouse going at Kyle Busch. Now, to go back to the actual incident on there, am I wrong to say that, especially early on in the race on a restart like that or on the green flag start, you got to be aggressive? Ricky Stenhouse didn't do anything wrong there. I don't really know what Kyle Busch was thinking there to retaliate like that, except for, I guess it's Kyle Busch.
Okay, I'm going to put my lawyer hat on, which is something I rarely do in this, on this podcast, because I like to leave it at home because nobody likes me because of it. But it was a little early for it, especially in an all-star race. I just think, I get where Kyle Busch was coming from. And mind you, I'm just making the other side of the argument here. But I get where Kyle Busch was coming from because he throws it in there 3 wide. I understand the sense of urgency to, to need to get track position and stuff like that. I just think from Kyle Busch's perspective, and oddly enough, I think this is part of the reason why Kyle Busch is struggling in NASCAR this year. He is used to that old style of racing to where guys just do not make aggressive moves like that, especially that early in the race. So I think Kyle Busch thought, okay, it's way too early to be doing stuff like that. But I think the way that NASCAR is going, these are the moves you have to expect every single lap. There is no lap off. And, like you said, I just think Kyle Busch was almost expecting that not to happen and was angry that it did, but there was nothing wrong with it.
And I'm glad you said that because I'll piggyback off of that. Kyle Busch, for all the reputation he got for being a hothead and this aggressive driver, you've seen the clips of him, wrecking in Truck Series and all that, going after guys. Really, he's one of the more respectful drivers on the track as far as the Cup Series level in 2024. Gives the guys a lot of respect as a veteran driver, especially guys like Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson have gone out emphatically and said, Kyle's one of the guys that I can race clean around and you can get it back. It's respectful. And I get that where you said he gets it in return, but someone like Ricky Stenhouse, who is honestly, to be quite frank, lucky to even be in the All-Star race because of winning last year, is taking the moment with, he's on those fresh new compound tires on a restart or on the green flag start there. At the end of the day, one, it's an all-star race, so what's it really worth it for Kyle Busch there? But 2, I mean, is it really that bad of a move? I mean, if Kyle Busch had done it to Ricky Stenhouse, I don't think Ricky Stenhouse would have tagged Kyle Busch in the wall. And if he did, oh my goodness, can you imagine the absolute meltdown that Kyle Busch and RCR would have had at JTD Doherty? I mean, I'm just looking at this, I guess, if the roles were reversed here. And I know that's not how this works, but I guess, like you said, for Kyle Busch, who is so respectful of other drivers, it was an incident and he tagged the wall, but he bounced right off it and it looked like he was okay. It's hard to say, but like you said, it was so early on the race to go ahead and just send it like that and torpedo Ricky Stenhouse. I just didn't love it, especially from someone like Kyle Busch.
I agree. I think you just have to look at the whole picture of, Kyle Busch hasn't had the best year. They're obviously struggling for momentum over at RCR. And this just seems like one of those moves where it's like, are you fucking kidding me? On lap 2, this is what we're going to do? And it just seemed like the wires crossed as soon as he hit the wall, the wires crossed and you knew something was going to happen. I don't think the punishment fit the crime in this instance. I think you give him a shot. I don't think you ruin his day. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's Kyle Busch. I mean, this is vintage Kyle Busch, wires crossing. We've seen it multiple times, like you said, in the Truck Series, in a lot of different instances. It just has been so long since we've seen it. We almost wondered if maybe fatherhood kind of took this out of him, but boy, no, it did not. I mean, message sent, to say the least. He's going to come after you if he feels like he's wrong.
I'm glad you mentioned that Kyle Busch in the running, especially in 2024, how he's, with the speed and how he's running in 2024 with RCR as a whole, because he even said when Ricky Stenhouse said, "I'm going to wreck you at Charlotte. I'm coming for it." He goes, "Congrats. Good. We suck right now. We suck. We're not very good." I think for Kyle Busch, he's kind of looking in the mirror like, I'm frustrated with everyone. I'm just frustrated that someone like Ricky Stenhouse is having the gall to come at me. The fact that I'm racing someone like Ricky Stenhouse on a week-to-week basis when Kyle Busch, 2 or 3 years ago was in the Joe Gibbs 18, competing for wins on a weekly basis or, in the top 10. It's not a secret that RCR has taken a massive step back this year. And for Kyle Busch, who had such a hot start to start 2023 in that new tenure with RCR, it was this new Kyle Busch reinvigorated. I'm just kind of seeing him fall into a rut as 2024 goes on. And this is just another example of how that leash is and that frustration is just growing by the second.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head. I think, at the end of the day, Kyle Busch has to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, this type of stuff will happen if you're racing in the back. I mean, it's, we call him Ricky Stenhouse for a reason. I mean, there's a reason that, that these types of things happen. Obviously, this one's not his fault, but these are the types of things that happen when you're hanging out, in the mid 20s or, probably even the mid teens to the, all the way back. You just kind of run into stuff like this. And, it was a shame that Kyle Busch couldn't keep the wires not crossed, but boy, oh boy, was it entertaining that the wires did cross, and that luckily there was no way for Ricky Stenhouse to leave the track, because boy, oh boy, did we get something.
Lock the doors behind him. Make this a real Coliseum event. And yeah, Ricky Stenhouse had about 200 laps there to steam for it. And, in street clothes to see him come up and wait for Kyle Busch at the hauler. You knew that something was going down there, Ad. I will say, though, the fact that we got to this point on lap 2, Ricky Stenhouse had the gall and the gumption to try it because he had these, new tires, these soft tires, these new compounds that were supposedly going to be very aggressive. They fall off quick, but you could have really quick speed in the short run. And Ricky Stenhouse said, I'm going to try this out. You saw a couple guys like him early on say, we're going to push these tires. And I think that's just part of the experiment there, is you're going to have some guys get a little too squirrely early on because they're pushing the limits on these tires. But at a 200 lap race, it felt like these soft tires went for about 100 laps and then they changed them. They were mandated to change them. I felt like Joe Logano probably could have led all 200 laps on those same tires if he really wanted to.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the issue that, I think us as common fans don't really consider, but how big of a difference does the time of day and temperature and stuff like that make for how these tires are going to wear? Because you heard Denny Hamlin after practice, the other day, glowing about these tires, and oh my gosh, there's going to be so much, there's so much variety of where guys can run because of the wear and everything. This tire is great. It gives Goodyear a lot of shit, but we got to give them their flowers. And then all of a sudden you watch the race and even the broadcast booth was kind of like, are these tires wearing? Like, or what's going on here? It was very odd.
Yeah, I think that you could look at it, like you said, the weather is the biggest thing for me. And I think that, like you said, when the track gets cool at night, the tires are just so much more grippier that you're not going to see that fall off as aggressive there. And when they were practicing, it was during the day. When you had that heat race early, or the open race on Sunday afternoon, it was hot. The sun was out. The track was slick. You saw some of that fall off in that multi-groove racing, and guys were going outside. But to play devil's advocate in that open race ad, the other thing that kind of jumps out to me that they were able to pass each other, and maybe I'm just looking at this from another angle, is that you had a lot of different styles of cars in there, a lot of different teams with different speeds in there. You had a couple of Joe Gibbs cars, a Hendrick car, a 2311 car, and then you had some of the back charter cars. So there was a lot of passing because there was a lot of discrepancies of speed, where in the All-Star main race, it's the best of the best there. And for the most part, those main teams, the discrepancies in speed are very, very minimal. So for a track like North Wilkesboro, when there's just a little bit of a gap, you're not going to see it really in that fall off.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think, we talk about how when everything else is the same as far as the car, the tire, most of the setups, because of, how many times we've been to North Wilkesboro at this point, everybody's got the same data. The drivers are really going to matter. And if there's ever a race where every driver oddly enough, has a very good chance at winning, it's the All-Star race, because it's all guys who have won before. So it just seems like, yeah, I think you're right. I think the drivers and the teams that are involved in the All-Star race definitely have something to do with it. I don't understand how, if you're Goodyear, the race is going to be run at night. Even if you get a bad review after practice from a driver about the tires or anything, it feels like you really need to, let's build a tire for when we're going to race, I guess. I don't know. It just is one of those things where it kind of felt a little bit anticlimactic to me, because we spent all week and, basically a month leading up to this talking about how ever since it was announced, the new tires, and oh my gosh, is this going to save short track racing? And then it was just kind of like I don't know. I may be crazy, but it just kind of felt like more of the same a little bit today, to where it was like, if you had a good car, you were fine, and your tires just weren't really going to wear out all that much.
So here's the other thing I will say is that, and you said this earlier, Ad, if everyone's doing the same thing, you're not going to see a whole bunch of discrepancies when everyone's on the same style of car and setup. When NASCAR says, okay, we're going to try these second compound tires, these soft compound tires, these option compounds, I guess they're calling them, you have to start on them. And then, whatever you want to do at the lap 50, lap 100, lap 150 cautions, you can do, but you don't have to change them if you don't want. We're just basically testing these tires, more or less. I guess my thing is, if they really wanted to have race strategy, it doesn't matter which tire you start on, whether it's the primary or the option compound, but you have to change at least one time in the race. You see this in F1 where it's mandated. You have to do 2 different tire compounds out of the 3 every weekend. If you're going to try something like this in the NASCAR All-Star race, you might as well go full in and say, hey, you have to use both, because you saw this today where the soft compound tire was so good in the cooler weather that Joe Logano was able to run all 100 laps and not change it. And they said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to run another 100 on those, or do you want to try something riskier? There's no incentive to, when they knew it was going to work. So I guess my thing is force them to get out of their comfort zone and to have to change, because otherwise they're just going to stick with what works.
Yeah, you brought up a very interesting point, that it was almost like they were testing with these tires and forcing everybody and mandating that you start on these soft tires and running 100 laps and saying, okay, let's see how this tire wears. Does it improve the racing? Yes or no? And ultimately, the All-Star race just seems to be where NASCAR is willing to take these big swings, whether it's the choose lane, which is now a part of our life all the time, double file restarts. I mean, all of these things started in the All-Star race. These were all things that were tested in the All-Star race and eventually made their way to regular points racing. So I think the tire compound may be going that way. I'm just interested to see, we got to drop some of the mandates of, you have to have this tire here. I think you just do a great disservice to the sport, and especially the engineering side of it and the strategy side, that you have crew chiefs that you pay a lot of money to make those types of decisions. Taking it out of their hands doesn't make any sense to me.
Adam, I'm disappointed in you, because you forgot one thing they tested in the All-Star race in the last few years, and that is at Bristol a few years ago in the COVID year. They moved the numbers back on us, and they were like, we're just doing this. We're going to add some neon underglow to the cars because we're at Bristol. It's just a cool little exhibition event. And then 2 years later in the next-gen car, what did they do? They moved the numbers. Now, they didn't move them to the back corner. They moved them to the front fender. But still, that was one of the All-Star changes that has happened the last few years. So, yes, you're right, though. There is a lot of testing they do under the surface without us even realizing.
Well, the thing is, Bob, I didn't want to bring up the numbers because I'm pretty sure there is a lot, I would say roughly 30% of the fan base that every single week is talking about the numbers being moved. So I was just trying not to pick it a scab, but by all means, let's pick it.
I mean, you might as well just go ahead and just target all the ones that'll comment. I haven't watched NASCAR since they moved the numbers back. It's unwatchable. I love that ad. I will tell you though, just to, we don't have as many cars to break down here in this open, or in this All-Star race and in the open, but what we can break down is that Joe Logano's numbers were seen the entire race, because he led 199 of the 200 laps, like we said. Similar to Kyle Larson's win last year at North Wilkesboro, it was a dominant start to finish race. He had speed all weekend. You saw it from practice and qualifying there. I mean, there's not a ton to break down, but the one thing I wanted to jump out here at, and then obviously we can go to whatever in these results, is that Ford, again, has speed. And just when we called them dead, that Talladega race where Kevin Harvick said, if they don't win, It's a crisis. We are officially doomsday for Ford. They didn't win, and what have they done since? They brought new engines to Kansas, and I'm just Darlington and now North Wilkesboro, and it seems like it's starting to make a difference, right?
I mean, I heard it really well described. I think it was Kevin Harvick who was talking about, Ford has always been the leader when horsepower matters. And then Chevy, as far as aerodynamics and stuff like that, that's when Chevy really shines. And then Toyota usually shines when handling and the agility of the car really matters. And it just felt like Ford kind of got away from, they were so focused on aero that they forgot, holy shit, we build some of the best engines in motorsports. And for them to basically have to go to Detroit, look at themselves in the mirror and say, dang it, we need to figure out something to get these boys some more power. And the way that it worked at intermediate tracks, we thought, okay, finally, they found something in intermediate tracks, they'll be competitive. But today, it seemed like there was a good deal of Fords, including Chris Buescher, who's strung together a few good weeks at this point, who has just, they seem to have found something. They've gone back to the drawing board, and luckily they did, because otherwise, I mean, shoot, I thought we were going to have to start writing eulogies.
For a minute there, I really thought it was Logano and Ryan Blaney 1-2 there for a few laps there at stage 3. And I was thinking about texting you, do we want to just call this the Penske weekend with the Indy qualifying earlier and then All-Star race? Are they just going to absolutely sweep again? They did it on Memorial Day last year. But yeah, a lot of reason to be excited for Ford. The one really of note, I guess, racing moment in this race ad was toward the beginning of stage 3. It had Joe Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson, who threw on some, I guess it was those scuff tires that were, a couple laps old. And you had some battling there. It just feels like they just couldn't all get runs on each other, but 3 different manufacturers at the end there. And I mean, man, it seems like Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson are always guys that are competing, just usual suspects, even at the All-Star race, right?
Yeah, stop me if you've heard this before, but Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson were racing each other. Ta-da! It's basically what we've come to expect. I mean, it's here we are. I mean, the other racing moment that kind of caught my attention was, when Christopher Bell kind of went under Joey Logano to try and make that move and got a little loose, and then Denny Hamlin, really quick decision from Denny Hamlin to kind of duck under and to, take the lead briefly there, which was a really cool move. I mean, it just, like you said, when a guy leads 199 laps in a race, there's just not going to be a lot to talk about as far as, how great the racing was or that type of thing. It was a dominant performance by Joey Logano at Ford.
I agree, 100%. Denny Hamlin, it feels like he's competitive at almost every sort of track when we go to now in the NASCAR calendar there. It's just, how is he going to lose the championship this year? I can't wait to see. And now I'm going to go ahead and warn everyone, if you're sick of Kyle Larson, this is probably the time to tune out, because we'll go ahead and start with the NASCAR side of it first. The man was not in the cup seat one time this week, flew in, lands on the helipad and says, all right, I'm going to jump into 200 laps, start the back. Has the moment there where he throws on those scuff tires and jumps from, I think it was 8th or 9th all the way to 3rd in a span of 10 to 15 laps. And I think I texted you, Kyle Larson is an alien. And you really thought, oh my God, here he goes. And then those tires, they really did die. It felt like those scuff tires did hit a wall and died. So I guess there is some fall off. There is a little bit of a middle ground there. But I mean, I really thought this podcast was either going to be Penske or Kyle Larson related for a good 20 or 30 minutes.
I agree 100%. It's just, I texted you earlier in the day. He could just wheel anything. It doesn't matter if you put him in a tractor. At this point, I would love to see him race anything with wheels. I will watch Kyle Larson wheel it, because to think of, we'll get more into the IndyCar stuff later, but just a very impressive day for Kyle Larson. He shows up to North Wilkesboro not even a couple hours before the race in a car that he had no idea what it was set up like, basically, and had no ideas what these soft tires were going to be like. He had never run them before, and he just wheeled it.
Did you hear the pre-race with Kevin Harvick where he said, I tried to call you a couple times to get, some info on the setup, but your phone didn't have service. You must be in North Wilkesboro. So no, he literally did not have any communication with Kevin Harvick beforehand.
Well, that's the weird thing, is that, North Wilkesboro is a great track for NASCAR, but they got to figure out something with the cell service. That seems to be a massive complaint on social media. A bunch of the people who go to the race, obviously, we have to hear from them after the race because there's no way they can get their tweets up during the race. So, but yeah, just the way that he was able to show up without knowing, without as little information he's had in years as a Hendricks driver, and to show up and wheel it the way he did. I mean, you just got to tip your cap sometimes, Bob. That's just incredible.
And to go in the span of 2 hours from doing your interview post qualifying at Indianapolis to on the grid in NASCAR at the All-Star race in your tracksuit ready to go, it's almost a warm-up for next weekend when he is doing the double on Memorial Day. And it's kind of a trial rehearsal, if you will. North Wilkesboro is a similar flight to Charlotte there. So, I mean, if he can do it at North Wilkesboro, I'm sure he can do it at Charlotte there. But we might as well get into the Indy side of it, the open wheel side. We are dipping our toe into the open wheel and IndyCar side. I know it's a little scary there, but we're going to be okay. We've got life preservers on. We're going to be fine. Today, the Indianapolis 500 qualifying, we had the Fast 12 and the elimination stuff. And Kyle Larson, of course, was in the Fast 12, qualifies in the Fast 6, and, I mean, puts down some laps there at around 233, fringe 232. I mean, it was just the fact that he's a rookie qualifying for the Indy 500, out-qualifies most of his McLaren teammates, if not all of them. I know he out-qualified Pato O'Ward for sure. That is just absolutely amazing and just shows the absolute talent that wheel man has, right?
If it has four wheels and a steering wheel, there's a strong chance that Kyle Larson can put it in good position. I mean, it was remarkable. He had never gone that fast. You heard him talking about it earlier in the week. He had never gone that fast in a car before. Was surprised that the sensation wasn't as fast as he thought it was. And to get that comfortable that quickly going 230 miles an hour into basically a square 90, it's not quite 90 degrees, but basically a 90-degree corner. I mean, that's absurd. And it takes, the balls that it takes to do that. And not only to, just to do it, but to do it amongst professionals who do it week in and week out and have run at Indy in an Indy car so many different times. I don't think we necessarily have the words that can adequately express how impressive this run is. It's massively impressive, Bob.
Massively impressive because now that he's actually qualified into the field, we can actually say it now. We're not jinxing it. He will be the fifth person in history to run the Memorial Day double on the same day, that 1,100 miles. We actually did a video on it. We'll go back and check it out. For the amount of time I slave for you people, okay, you better enjoy it. But no, on a serious note there, it feels like this is the first time in probably 25 years almost that we've had a guy that legitimately we're going into the weekend thinking he has a shot. I know Kurt Busch in 2014, he finished, I believe, 6th, but you went into the weekend going, he's a rookie. He doesn't really have a ton of experience on this. We'll see what it looks like. And then you get Kyle Larson in there, and not only is it a perfect storm where he's in great equipment with Arrow McLaren, but he's had a year of sim work to prepare. He's got Tony Kanaan in his ear, who is, about as good of a blanket as you can get at Indianapolis. It's just a perfect storm of, I feel like I'm insane for thinking Kyle Larson can win this race. I'm also insane for thinking Kyle Larson has no shot for winning this race. And I don't know which part to go with here.
No, you're 100% right. It's so interesting to me because for years we've kind of consistently talked about who's going to be the next guy to run the Indy double. And, Kyle Larson's name was always out there, but we're like, I really think he would do well. And for everyone's speculation to kind of be proven right a little bit. Obviously, we're not all the way there. It's qualifying. We still got to go on the race, but to start in the second row of the Indy 500 after qualifying, after your first time qualifying in the car, it's just so impressive. And, it's almost like we're skipping the whole, can Kyle Larson run the Indy double to, can Kyle Larson win both races in the Indy double? And it doesn't feel like it's that, absurd of a thought at this point, especially after the qualifying performance today. If you would have told me that last week, I would have, I probably would have said, oh, come on, no, like, he's never driven the car, he's never done, it's all so new to him, the travel aspect of it, this is going to be so difficult. But like you said, after the little trial run today of kind of having to get in the helicopter and go from Indy to North Wilkesboro, it's not going to be such a foreign thing for him to do it next week. And my God, he just runs both cars so well. anytime you start the top 5 of a race, you're going to have a chance to win it. And that's exactly the position he's in for the Indy 500.
100% agreed. I'm fascinated to look forward to Sunday, because not only as a motorsports fan is Memorial Day weekend usually kind of the Christmas for racing, but then you add in this crossover event where you've got a NASCAR driver and IndyCar doing this double. And when I'm watching this ad, maybe I'm crazy here, maybe I'm just, too deep into NASCAR here, but when I'm watching this, especially on the IndyCar broadcast, and they're making a big deal of it, every time Kyle Larson is in the seat and on track, I'm sitting up and watching it, and I am intently just glued to every second, every lap he makes. And I just feel like I'm watching history unfold slowly in front of our eyes. And maybe I'm, again, just overdoing it here, but we could look back here years from now and say, man, when Kyle Larson did that double in 2024, we went in thinking he had a chance, but I mean, we could be looking at one of the greatest moments in sports if he pulls off something here. You never know. I'm not saying he will, but man, can you just imagine the potential here in motorsports in North America?
The big word is if, and it's going to carry us all the way into next week. We just have so much time to speculate on what could, might, or should happen in this, in the double for Kyle Larson. I'm just excited. It's probably the most, I haven't been this excited for a crossover event since they did the Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron crossover on Nickelodeon. So this feels like it's one of those things for me. I'm a sucker for a good crossover event. So good luck, Kyle Larson. We will be speculating about you all week long.
We will be thinking about you, because there is one thing I will say, Ad, that does give me a little bit of worry in Kyle Larson in the Indy 500. And it's not the equipment he's in. It's the equipment he's up against, because those Penske Chevrolets, all three of them, Newgarden, Will Power, and of course Scotty McLaughlin, who had the fastest pole run in Indy 500 this year in 2024. The amount of speed they had, I mean, it was just insane, and it was all three of them locked in there. Kyle Larson's going to have to battle all three of those guys if he wants to get through it. But, I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch this battle moving forward on Sunday, and just a really 500 miles of attrition.
Yep, it's just that. I think it was so funny. I think it was Alexander Rossi who was feeling, kind of like, damn it, I'm just so tired of hearing about these Penske drivers and how they're going to get in the top 3. And he wanted to shove it to him so bad, but the poor guy just didn't have the equipment. It's kind of wild that you could show up to the track and just say, yeah, we're probably going to qualify the top row. And it pisses everybody off, but then you go and do it, and it's like, well, I guess we got to shut up now.
I mean, it helps when your owner does own the track and owns the series and has had the cheating scandal to start the year. But no, genuinely, it is just absurd the amount of speed that Penske has had the last few years, but this year especially, just to be miles above it. And then add, I know we don't usually cover IndyCar a ton on this podcast, but the qualifying for Indy 500 is so unique compared to any other motorsports, because you've got Saturday and Sunday, 5 hours to do as many runs as you want on Saturday, as long as you stay in line. So you usually get 2 to 3 runs. And then Sunday, you've got the top 12, the top 6, but you've also got the bottom 4 qualifying for the last 3 spots. So somebody doesn't even get to race. I mean, it's amazing to think, because you get the dual races at Daytona, a couple of those uncharted cars get in, but imagine if the entire field was not locked in to any of these races, IndyCar, F1, NASCAR. It's such a unique aspect, and to see the emotions on both of these days, from Rinus VeeKay, who wrecked on his first run to 30 seconds left, making it to the top 12. And then you've got bump day to day, and all 4 drivers just with their heart in their throat. I mean, am I wrong to say it's one of the best events of the year?
It's so much fun. I would say it's the best event that a motorsport has that is not the actual race itself, is the weekend of qualifying at Indy, because there's so much drama, there's so much suspense. I mean, just think about how I didn't know who Nolan Siegel was to begin the day, and at the end of it, I was like, damn, this young kid who was here to qualify, and he basically just said, I'm putting the pedal on the floor, and it's either going to stick and I'm going to qualify for the Indy 500, or I'm going to go into the wall. And of course, he ended up into the wall, but you just have to respect the commitment. It's one of those things where, and the way that the timer just adds urgency, there's just so much to Indy qualifying that makes it really can't miss television if you're a racing fan.
100%. And again, it's the 108th running. even the most non-motorsports fan in America knows what the Indy 500 is. It has that mass appeal, the same thing as the Daytona 500. You could argue even tenfold at times because of just the lore and the history of it, and the fact that if with the crowds and just if you win, you're a legend forever. It's a perfect storm for motorsports fans, new and old, where it blends that tradition but still the present and ingenuity. And I'm just it's a perfect lead in the month of May as it ramps up into this Memorial Day triple header. You've got Monaco in the morning. The qualifying at Monaco is really dang good on Saturday. The racing on Sunday is not very good, but again, the qualifying is some of the best all year in motorsports. Indy 500, Coke 600 ad. As a racing fan, we are eating, my friend.
Oh, 100%. We're going to eat all of this, and even if I'm full, I'm just going to continue eating like it's me on Thanksgiving. I'm going back for that fourth plate of racing. I mean, like you said, if the qualifying in Indy isn't the best qualifying in motorsports, then it's Monaco. It's got to be the close second because of just the implications, the narrow track, the way that they just absolutely have to fly through there with reckless abandon. It's just going to be such a good weekend for motorsports, and then add in the Kyle Larson's doing the Indy double. I'm giddy, Bob. I don't know how I'm going to get through this work week. I'm going to be honest.
I am counting down the days till Saturday and Sunday. We are going to be covering it all here on Breaking Balls again. The month of May is finally ramping up. The big week is here. This is kind of our Thanksgiving, Christmas all wrapped into one here. We're going to be putting content out as always. So give us a follow, like, subscribe. Again, we've had some good growth the last few weeks. I'm glad to see people are finally liking our content ad. Guess we're doing something okay, but we're moving forward here, and we're going to be here all week for this 1100 double, whether we're in the car or on the screen.
Amen. We can't thank you guys enough for the support. Keep it up. Like, comment, subscribe. Bob said it best. We're just going to keep producing content. If you like what you see, please let us know. If you want to see something else, let us know in the comments. We're open to suggestion. We're looking to cover motorsports for the fans, baby.
And if anyone has the contact details to set up a charity fight with Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch, as Ricky said on the post-race interview, I will fight him in a charity event. We will gladly set that up here at Breaking Balls. We don't have the financial investors yet for it, but if you're interested in partnering with us for this rough and rowdy style Kyle Busch, Ricky Stenhouse fight, we are all gung-ho in here for it. So 83 episodes down, ad. The month of May is here, 1,100 miles to go. Is there anything else that we are here? Well, I'll give you the last words here. Finish us out. Take us home.
Short track racing is all you can say about this. Dad and son fighting a cup champion. Where else but NASCAR, baby? Short track racing.